I'm not prepared yet. If you can't be patient, then go marry someone else. She said it like it was nothing, like the years we'd spent together were just a waiting room she could leave any time. I remember the exact moment, the soft clink of cups in the cafe, the low hum of strangers talking, and her eyes, steady, almost daring me to react. I didn't. I care about you, I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt, but I'm not going to beg or fight for commitment. For a second, something flickered across her face. Not regret, surprise. I reached into my pocket, took out the ring I had carried for weeks, and placed it gently on the table. The diamond caught the light between us, cold and distant. Then I stood up. No shouting, no drama, just the sound of my chair sliding back as I walked away from everything I thought we were. My name is Armin, and for most of my life, I was the kind of man people described as steady, reliable, to the point of invisibility. I built my career from nothing, long hours and quiet discipline, while others chased noise and recognition. I never needed attention. I believed consistency was enough. With her, I gave more than I ever had. We met when I had very little, just ambition and a stubborn belief that I could build something real. She saw the potential, not the struggle, and somewhere along the way I became her certainty, but she never became mine. I noticed the pattern early, but I ignored it. Plans shifted around her mood. Decisions paused until she felt ready. My milestones, promotions, investments, sacrifices were acknowledged with a smile, then quietly dismissed. I told myself love required patience. That timing mattered. But patience, I learned, can look a lot like permission. Her family adored me, dependable, respectful, the man they assumed would always stay. To them, I was already part of the structure, a fixed piece that didn't move. And that was the problem. They thought I would wait forever. She thought I wouldn't leave, and I let them believe it. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. It was in the pauses, those small, almost invisible moments where I slowly stopped existing in her priorities. She would glance at her phone while I was speaking, nodding without hearing a word. Plans we made weeks in advance were rescheduled with a casual shrug, as if my time had no weight. At dinners with her family, I noticed the shift. Her mother would smile at me warmly, asking about work, while she sat beside me scrolling, occasionally correcting me mid-sentence in a tone that sounded light, but landed heavy. "You're overthinking it," she'd say softly, placing her hand over mine. Not to comfort, but to quiet. Her father once joked, "Armin's patient. He'll wait as long as you need." Everyone laughed. I did too, but I felt it, the quiet assumption settling in the room. That I was already secured, already chosen, already staying. Even when we were alone, it was the same pattern dressed differently. Conversations about the future ended, with her vague smiles and careful deflections. "Soon," she would say, "just not yet." And every time her voice carried the same calm certainty. Not that she needed more time, but that I wasn't going anywhere. The moment didn't come with shouting or betrayal loud enough for others to hear. It arrived quietly, like everything else between us. Well, it was 2 nights before the cafe. We were at her cousin's engagement dinner, surrounded by soft lights and polite applause. I watched her smile for them, genuine, effortless, celebrating a commitment she herself kept postponing. Someone at the table leaned toward her and asked, half joking, "So, when is it your turn?" She laughed. Not nervous, not uncertain, just dismissive. "Let me breathe first," she said, waving it off. I'm not in a rush like everyone else. I was sitting right beside her. No glance in my direction. No acknowledgement of what that answer meant for me, for us. Just a room full of people nodding along, as if my role in her life didn't require an answer. That's when it settled in. It wasn't fear holding her back. It wasn't timing. It was choice. She was comfortable exactly where we were because it cost her nothing. All the waiting, all the adjusting, all the understanding, that was mine to carry. And in that moment, something inside me went still. Not anger, not heartbreak, clarity. For the first time I saw it plainly. She wasn't unsure about the future. She just wasn't choosing me in it. I didn't confront her after that night. There was nothing left to argue. Clarity doesn't need discussion. It needs action. So I began quietly. The first thing I did was review everything that tied us together. Not emotionally, practically. The apartment lease was in my name. The car she used daily, also mine. The small business investment I had helped her start, I had structured it carefully months ago. A habit from years of handling contracts and risk. On paper, it was all clean, all mine. Not out of control, out of discipline. I spoke to my lawyer the next morning. No drama, just facts. I asked the right questions, closed the open ends, and made sure that when I stepped away, there would be no confusion and no negotiation. Then I started withdrawing, piece by piece. I moved my important documents first. Then finances, accounts separated, shared expenses settled. I cancelled plans weeks in advance, always politely, always without explanation. She didn't question it. Why would she? In her mind, I was still there, still waiting. At home, I became quieter. Not distant, just unavailable in ways she couldn't quite name. No arguments, no warnings, just absence slowly taking shape. By the time she told me to go marry someone else, I already had. Not another person, but a decision. I didn't rush the ending. I let it arrive exactly the way she had shaped it. Casual, unguarded, unprepared. After the cafe, I gave it 2 days. Long enough for silence to feel unusual but not alarming. Long enough for her to assume I just needed space and would return like I always had. Instead, I finalized everything. The apartment was cleared of my presence first. Documents gone. Essentials packed. The rest scheduled for removal. The car was picked up while she was out. A simple message left with the building manager. No confrontation, no scene. Her small business account, separated. Exactly as the contracts allowed. Clean, legal, untouchable. Then I left a single envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside there was no anger. No accusations. Just copies, lease details, account closures, and a short note in my handwriting. You asked me to marry someone else, so I chose myself. When her family called later, their voices sharp with confusion and anger, I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain, because there was nothing unclear about what I had done. For the first time, the silence wasn't mine to carry. It was hers. The reactions came exactly as I expected, just louder than usual. Her family called first. Confusion, then anger, layered with disbelief. To them, I had broken something that was already settled. Her mother's voice carried hurt more than accusation, repeating the same question in different ways. Why didn't you just wait a little longer? As if time was the only thing I owed. Her father was colder, measured, disappointed. Not in her, but in me. You should have handled this like a man, he said. I almost smiled at that, because for the first time I had. Friends reached out next, some careful, some curious. A few tried to mediate, suggesting I'd overreacted. That these things take time, but none of them had been sitting in that silence, slowly being reduced to an option instead of a choice. And her, she didn't call immediately, which told me everything. When she finally did, days later, there was no anger, just something unfamiliar in her voice. Uncertainty. The kind I had carried for years. That's when it shifted. This was never just about a relationship ending. It was about value. How quietly it can be taken, and how firmly it has to be reclaimed. Because if you don't decide your worth, someone else will decide it for you. In the weeks that followed, life didn't become louder. It became clearer. There was no dramatic sense of victory, no sudden rush of happiness, just a quiet steadiness returning, the kind I hadn't felt in a long time. Mornings were mine again. Decisions were simple. I no longer measured my words or waited for the right moment to be chosen. I focused on what I had neglected, my work, my health, the parts of myself I had slowly set aside while trying to fit into someone else's timing. Progress came back, not as pressure, but as rhythm. People still asked about her sometimes. I answered honestly, but briefly. There was nothing left to explain. What surprised me most was the absence of regret, not because it didn't matter, but because I finally understood it had mattered enough to walk away. I didn't lose her. I lost the version of myself that was willing to stay unchosen. And as for the future, there's no urgency in it anymore. No waiting rooms, no half promises, just clarity and the quiet confidence that when something is right, it won't require me to disappear to keep it. Because the strongest decision I ever made was the one I made without saying a word.